Looked at the work of various community-based organizations that promote culture-based education beyond classroom walls. This was perhaps one of the hardest panels to compose only because we had so many different people that we could have featured. But we are grateful for the representation that we have here today. We tried to make sure that there was some variety in terms of some of the different areas of foci and some of the various types of work that have been done. And we are grateful for each of these panel members for accepting the call and being willing to come and share their mana'o with all of us today. This panel discussion is entitled A Kuleana Kākou Culture-Based Education in the Community. And we're pleased to have joining with us as the moderator for today's panel discussion, Herb Lee Jr., the Executive Director of the Pacific American Foundation. And he served in that capacity since 2005. Pacific American Foundation, or PAF, has been recognized as one of the leading nonprofits in the development of culture-based education programs for both Native Hawaiians and non-Hawaiian students in Hawaii public schools. Herb also has 26 years of experience as a community involvement specialist and has been a recording artist, Hawaiian musician, and a cultural practitioner for 35 years. Joining Herb on this panel for the discussion today, we have the following individuals. I'll introduce all of them, and then I'll give you an opportunity to offer your applause at the end. Eric Enos, the Executive Director and co-founder of Ka'ala Farm Incorporated and the Cultural Learning Center at Ka'ala. As a lifelong resident of Waianae, Eric is deeply involved in the perpetuation of our cultural and ancestral traditions, as well as the management, care, and restoration of our land and sea. Eric has helped foster many community partnerships to address long-term issues of land use, traditional practices, community health, and education. Bonnie Kahape'a-Tanner, Program Director of Mana Maoli-Kānehūnāmoku Voyaging Academy. She has a master's in psychology and a master's in transformative learning and change. She is a crew member of the Voyaging Canoe Makali'i and senior captain of Kānehūnāmoku. The Kānehūnāmoku Voyaging Academy works with learners of all ages to perpetuate and preserve the legacy of Pius Mau Pialug through hands-on and minds-on opportunities aboard the Va'akaulua Kānehūnāmoku. Ka'iu Kimura, the Executive Director of the Imiloa Astronomy Center of Hawaii, where she has played an integral role in developing the mission of the center, as well as cultivating and establishing critical community support for the continuance of astronomical research while ensuring the integrity and integration of the host culture. Ka'iu is a graduate of the Kamehameha School's class of 1996 and achieved a Bachelor of Arts degree and a Master's of Arts degree at the University of Hawaii Hilo in Hawaiian language and literature. Chad O'Nohi Paishon joined the Polynesian Voyaging Society in the Apprentice Navigator program in 1990, as the society was preparing to voyage to Rarotonga 1992 to train a new generation of crew members and navigators. Chad participated in the repair and maintenance work on Hokulea at Pier 42 and was a crew member on the 1992 leg to Tahiti. He is currently the Executive Director of Kalai Wa'a Moku o Hawaii. And our last panelist, Stacy Sproat-Beck, is the Executive Director of the Waipa Foundation. Stacy was educated at Kamehameha schools, received a BS in Business Entrepreneurship from the University of Southern California, and has been with Waipa for 19 years, growing the foundation from a small, entirely volunteer organization to a thriving nonprofit with 17 staff and over 25 weekly volunteers. Waipa manages the resources of the 1,600-acre Waipa watershed while implementing a full range of eco-cultural programming and activities to various groups and schools year-round. Stacy oversees all facets of the organization's operations, assists with garden and lo'i work and management, and participates in program planning and implementation. Please join me in welcoming our panel for this morning's presentation. And now I'll turn it over to our moderator, Mr. Herb Lee.
Thanks, Aaron. Everybody can hear me? Aloha. Wisdom and discernment. Is Auntie Verly here? That's what I pray for every day. In the morning I pray for wisdom, at night I pray for discernment. The winds of change are here, and there are tremendous challenges. And that's how I face those challenges every day. We live in the greatest community classroom on the planet, Hawaii. Would you agree? And these panelists here have been walking the talk for a long time in helping us to reconnect what the wisdom of our ancestors to the 21st century change in education in Hawaii. When I say the winds of change, to me, from where I sit, we've been waiting for this opportunity for generations to be able to make the paradigm shift in how we teach our children today. And these panelists up here, I've had opportunities to cross paths with them, maybe not as deeply as I like, but they represent the change that is coming. And it's familiar. It's challenging, but it's familiar. And the reason I say that is because as we live in a place where traditional knowledge is still inside of us. Unfortunately, a lot of our kids have lost a connection to the place. Auntie Malia Craver always told us that, don't go looking for all of the answers all over the earth, all over the four corners of the earth. The answers are right here inside. And I think the answer is aloha. And I really believe in what Pilahi Paki. And so in some ways, I was very inspired by Auntie Myrna and Uncle Eddie right before this. And as I was thinking about the panelists and what we want to share with you and how their personal journeys have been able to make those connections to our keiki and to place, it is almost like everyone here has composed their own song in that journey. And together, with all of us, we can harmonize in ways that we've never done before as we face the challenges of the change that is not coming, that is here now. So to me, this is about taking advantage of the opportunity that we have in our generation at this time and this place to be able to use a knowledge of the traditions of our history and to learn what we have learned in our lifetime, in our personal journeys and our personal walk, to be able to take it to the highest level now and to really utilize a community as a classroom that it was always meant to be and always has been. And that's why I say it's familiar. We just have to go get it. And it's about walking the talk. And I'm really honored to be here to kind of share this moment with my colleagues on the panel because they're doing some incredible things. So we had some guiding questions, and it's kind of academic to me. And I'm gonna read it just for your benefit, and then I'm gonna kind of summarize. And to me, it's all about individual passion. And I wanted, maybe to spend maybe 5 minutes for each organization to kind of share their individual passion and how that passion has touched our children, and how that has helped to reconnect. And where do we go from here? How can we all help each other get to that higher place? And how can we continue to nurture the seeds that the winds are taking in our community? So the first question was, how do you view the efforts of your organization as promoting culture-based education in your community? The second one, what do you find are the benefits of participation in your programs and other aspects of the participant lives? How can they learn in your programs and enhance what participants learn in other areas of their lives? So being local, being able to apply that, but also being able to navigate in the global world that we're in now. What steps has your organization taken to connect to the formal education system, the DOE, the charter schools, whatever it is, home schools, and how have they been able to incorporate what they do in their personal journey to be part of the new learning experience for our students and families? And lastly, how would you envision the experiences provided by your organization being embedded as part of the educational experiences of all Haumana in your communities? So with that, again, to me it's about the passion, it's about how we inspire, and hopefully we have been able to inspire. These panelists have really inspired me in my walk. And so I'd like to ask Chad, do you want to, or anyone wants to go first? I just, I'm just looking over there, we can go, or whoever wants to go first, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah, mahalo.
Mahalo nui. And since I'll start, just bear with me. Kuni ka hela ka mauna I luna, mauna ke a hola wakua no na hui hui hoku, ka peke peke ke alalave ia na e ka ohu, ke na ka ko I ke hi hi ka vavai ka haumeku, hai ali I kani uina kane o ko ulono, olono I tale ono e tomo. E ia mai la o lili o hihi manui ke anu he anu hau ke hau lili uleleo ke vei ki o ke o kau iki ke niu nei. Anu aia. Aloha mai. Aloha. It's really, it's humbling to be sitting up here because it's really, like has been shared, we all share the same passion for our home. And it's really in that sense that we all come from that side of seeing our home from the perspectives that we come from. For me, I was born here on the island of Oahu, in a place where when we were growing up, we called it Beverly Hills. Otherwise known as Papakolea. And then our family moved out to Nanakuli, and I was raised in Nanakuli on 3rd Road. But it was really through my grandparents that I had this real strong sense of understanding and what it is for, first of all, our family and the kuleana that you carry within your family and who you're responsible to within your family. And that stretched out that you're not only responsible within your family, you're responsible to the community that you come from. And that when you do things, you represent your family, you represent your community, you represent your island. So it was really in that sense that coming to the canoe, when I grew up here in Hawaii, I think there's probably less and less of us now that grew up in a time when Hawaii didn't have any voyaging canoes. But now that Hawaii has 7, 8 voyaging canoes. But some of us in this room remember when Hokulea was being created. And being one that loved to be in the ocean, on the ocean, underneath the ocean, wherever the ocean was. When Hokulea got created in those days, and it was the best watermen and women that we had. For me, growing up as a young person, my dream was to just get close enough to touch Hokulea. If I could get close enough to Hokulea to just touch her, it would have been a dream come true. Because I would have been as close as I could physically get to the stories that my grandparents had told me about how our people came to these islands. And it was really in that sense that never imagining that someday I would stand on the deck of Hokulea. And when I was invited to become a crew member on Hokulea, I met incredible men and women that were really my heroes growing up. I got to sit in the same room and talk with them and get inspired by them. And there was really, like Uncle Eddie was saying earlier, those teachers that helped to inspire and help to reinforce that side of family, that helped to reinforce the responsibility that we all carried. So it became something that was very familiar to me. It was the same story that I had heard my whole life. That it's our kuleana, it's our responsibility to take care of one another. It's our responsibility to care for our community. It's our responsibility to ensure that we will be successful in everything that we do. That you and I have a connection, that you and I are both responsible to one another. That we're all part of the solution. That we all serve a function. There's no one that sits that does not have a purpose to be here. If you don't know what that is, quickly get a clue. Start to figure it out. Because we need you to. We need you to be a functioning part of the canoe. That he wa'a, he moku, he moku, he wa'a. Our canoe is the island. When we're out in the middle of the ocean, that's our island. Everything that we carry, every man, woman that stands on the deck of the canoe brings something with them. Our resources are on that island. The values that we live by, they're all on the wa'a. So why should it be any different when we come home to this wa'a? Why does it change? We don't change. We just carry on that same concept home here, that this moku is our wa'a. We're still responsible to one another. We're still responsible to the resources. We were still responsible to carry those values. That's our kuleana. You know? So it's really in that sense that for Kalai Wa'a Moku Hawaii, Clay Bertelman brought home that passion to the community within Waimea to build a canoe called Makali'i, so that passion could continue. That direction that we were able to gain and to learn again aboard Hokulea could be brought home to a community on the moku.
Mahalo. Thank you. Bonnie, you want to go next?
Aloha mai kākou. I think probably good to segue into Kānehūnāmoku and our program, because we grew out of Makali'i, out of Kalai Wa'a Moku, Hawaii. So going to school on the Big Island, UH, and was introduced to the Makali'i, and similar to Chad's story, the canoe was sitting there in Kona on the pier, and was with some of my friends that are here today, and I just looked at the canoe and I saw some people on the canoe, and the only thing I could think of was, how am I gonna get close to her? How am I gonna get on her? And my friend was like, oh, you know, that's the crew. So it's like, okay, so we're just standing kind of admiring. And then someone said, oh, if you guys wanna go on the wa'a, you guys gotta go ask those two guys over there. And they pointed to Chad and Captain Clay Bertelman. And I looked at them and I was like, oh no, this ain't, it's not gonna happen for me, because I was like, oh, they're so scary looking. And, but it was, it was that sense of fear in that, because you knew that they had a lot of mana. And so eventually, I think it was Kainani that was like, come on, let's just go ask them. And we walked over and she introduced me to them, and they were like, yeah, go ahead, go ahead. So we got on the canoe, and that was pretty much it for me. By the end of that afternoon, they said, what are you guys doing tomorrow morning? And we're like, oh, we're just cruising in Kona. And they said, oh, come back early. We'll go sail to Kealakekua. And that was my first sail, was 1995. And from there, just tried to be at the canoe as much as possible. By then, I had moved back to Oahu and was working for Punana Leo o Kauai Ha'o, following that passion that I had started. And then that quickly evolved into a passion for the wa'a, and would fly, basically work all week, and then fly back to the Big Island every Friday night, and then fly home to Oahu every Monday morning for work. And that continued on for about 2 years, which eventually led up to 1999, our voyage, the AML voyage to Sarawak, to take our Grandmaster Navigator, Maupiailug, home. And from there, came back, and you have to kind of quit your job when you go on these things, or at least when you're younger. You can say, I quit, I'm going on a voyage for 3 months, you know. So came home and then had to find a job, and then that was when the charter schools were starting. and Keola Nakanishi and a few others who were starting halau kumana here on Oahu had received some federal funding for a Hawaiian astronomy grant. He approached me and he said, what do you think about starting a Wa'a program here? And I was like, oh, this sounds perfect, because one of Mao's things that he told us on that voyage was, your kuleana or your responsibility is to share what I teach you, what your experience is. And so it really just kind of fell perfectly together. And so we've been running the Kānehūnāmoku since 2002. And within the past few years, we've branched out from the charter school. We still service the charter schools, but now we're branching out into more community-based education. Mahalo.
Mai ka'i, mahalo. Mahalo for sharing that. Island of Kauai, Waipa, Stacy.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Really honored to be here, and great to hear you guys' stories, and really feel like I'm among colleagues both here and in the audience as well. All the way over, I was asking myself, really? Why am I coming here? It's preaching to the choir. And it is. And in so many ways, we're just one big ecosystem all moving towards the same goal. So that's wonderful. So many of you have heard the story of Waipa. I'll tell it again because it's significant and we've come a long way. I stand on the shoulders of my dad and the other kupuna from our North Shore community on Kauai, who are of Uncle Eric's generation, who really... Sorry for dating you, Uncle. Well, Waipa is of the same generation of Ka'ala. And their goal in, I can't say starting Waipa, because Waipa is a place. It's an ahupua'a, 1,600-acre intact ahupua'a, right on Hanalei Bay on the Makai side, up to Mamalahoa, which is about 3,000 feet Mauka. And it's an intact ahupua'a, mountain to the sea. It's owned by Kamehameha schools, and it's one of 2 Kamehameha schools land holdings on Kauai, only 2. The ahupua'a next door is Lumahai, which is 10 times the size of Waipa, and that's the other Kamehameha land holding on Kauai. And so back in the 1980s, the story is that back in the 80s, when Kamehameha was trying to make money to support the school at Kapalama, they were going to develop. You're going to build subdivisions, gated communities, lake, golf courses in Waipa and Lumahai back in the early 1980s. Waipa was coming out of a 40-year pasture lease, and their plan was to develop. And the kupuna of our community saw the future. They saw, how many of you here have been to Hanalei recently? Anybody? Did it look like a California beach town to you? Aye. Did you see any brown people? Ole. And they really saw that in 30 years, the North Shore of Kauai, with its amazing beauty, was going to become what it is today, a resort community, basically. And our people were going to lose our place within that community. And as they were already losing access, gathering rights, being overrun by tourists, basically, and just losing the value of who we were and what we did, and what we do as a subsistence people living in today's world, a Hawaiian people. And so they saw that and they struck out to save Waipa, basically. It took them 4 years of negotiation with Kamehameha, and eventually the lease ended up in their hands. And so this group of community has been at Waipa since, for 30 years now, basically. And we've gone through different forms. They started as a for-profit. We're now at the Waipa Foundation, a nonprofit, still community-based and managed. And through all of these years, we've held on to the same vision, which was basically to malama this resource and this aina as a land base for the practice and perpetuation of our culture, to share with our community and empower our community and for anyone that's interested, basically. And so today, Waipa receives about 6,000 people a year. Wow. Onto the aina. About 4,000 of them, we do everything, we do so many things. And about 4,000 of them come on field trips and extracurricular group visits. And we have several different communities. When we answer the questions later, I just wanted to give you guys kind of a background. One of our primary community, well, they're both our primary community, but one of our communities is the North Shore of Kauai, our geographic community, and specifically the people in that community who have been displaced and who are suffering as a result of the social changes of the last several hundred years, which is us, right? And not just us, but now there's so few of us that we're banding together with all the rest of the locals. Because then there is another community out there that is the transient community, the affluent community that can move there, second or third homes. They move in, and when they get tired of it, then they move out. And so we have two different communities, and we're really serving, of course, our community there. So this is our geographic community that we try to enrich and empower and help and support in every way and as much as possible. And then we also are a learning site, and that basically a landscape for learning with the ahupua'a that we have and the resources that we've been able to develop and restore there. We're a site for school groups that come on, like I said, field trips, extracurricular group visits, basically almost any educational group from anywhere that's interested in coming and learning from the Aina there to come to. So that is another community, which is everybody, all of you, anybody who wants to come to Waipa and learn. And so, yeah, that's what we do today, and we are, like I said, just involved in so many different facets of empowerment and enrichment and education for our community, from economic development to providing poi and food and welcoming schools on visits and everything. So happy to be here and share with you guys today. Mahalo.
Thank you, Stacy. Ka'io, Big Island, going back to the Big Island, and how many of you have been to the Imiloa Discovery Center on the Big Island? Okay. So, Ka'io Murphy, Kimura, sorry. I'm thinking of Polynesian voyaging.
We're classmates and both from Waipā, so similarities.
Ka'io Kimura.
Aloha kakahiaka. Ahu kupanaha ya Hawai'i Imiloa, a ole e pau na ahana a Hawai'i Imiloa. This is a phrase that was set forth by Kepelino, one of our early Hawaiian scholars, and that's what called forth the name of the Imiloa Astronomy Center that I work at today. That quote translates to mean that numerous, deep, unfathomable are the amazing knowledge and discoveries that Hawaii holds. And that search for knowledge to empower our community is ongoing and never ends. That's the thought that went into building this place that we know today as Imiloa. And I was fortunate to be a part of it since its planning years, from 2001. I grew up in a very small town called Waimea on the island of Hawaii. Very close community, families all related, families all close, with very deep connection to the history of Waimea and to Mauna Kea. For many of us, we take our piko up to Mauna Kea to root and plant our keiki and their connections to that place. And growing up, there was always, when it came to Mauna Kea, there was always this struggle over the development of astronomy on Mauna Kea and the stories of our families and the connection and keeping that place sacred. And there was a disconnect between what was going on in terms of astronomy development and the community that connects its genealogy to Hawaii. So I grew up being around that. I went to college at Hilo, studied Hawaiian language and literature, worked for Punana Leo, and had been really involved in the Hawaiian language immersion schools. And then one day, I was taken down to Kauai Harbor, where I met Uncle Clay Bertelman. And we were sitting on the pier, me and Kanani Makaimoku, who's also here, maybe not here now. And Uncle Clay said, go, sit on the canoe, just go hang out. So we did, and we both fell asleep. Half of the day, we were on that canoe getting scorched in the Kauai sun. But there was something about that, from that day on, similar to Kahape'a, the canoe became a big part of my life. And So in 2001, the university started to talk about planning this center that was going to highlight and celebrate the native culture of Mauna Kea and bring it together with modern astronomy in a way that would hopefully inspire the future generations. That was kind of the general terminology that was put out in the beginning, and I was approached to work on the project to build this center. So I reflected back on my childhood days and thought, oh, but this is such a struggle for our community. This idea of astronomy existing on Mauna Kea. And there were two really important people in my life who helped me to realize and come into my kuleana as someone being from Waimea with a familial connection to Mauna Kea. One being Uncle Clay, who sat me down and said, look, you have a kuleana to participate in this because this is going to be something that benefits our keiki and the generations to follow them. If it's not somebody from this place helping to give input to build this center, then they're just going to bring in people and they're going to be from the outside with no connection to Mauna Kea. Now, he used some other words in that language, if any of you know Uncle Clay, that made it really seal the deal. You got to do it. And the second person being my Uncle Larry Kimura, who I had the privilege of working alongside for 5 years in building the center. And his sort of really staunch vision that the center had to be for our people, done by our people, spoken through our people. And for 5 years, we sat down, and I believe it's for the first time ever in history where practitioners and people from our community sat at the table. We had research astronomers sitting at the table, educators, business people, all charged with the task of bringing our perspective to the table and making this vision happen of a center that would tell the story of Mauna Kea in a way that's inspiring and getting our own kids to see themselves as the next leaders in science and engineering and innovation. It was challenging because we all came from very different perspectives. And at the end of the day, we even had to walk away from the table at parts of the time because we just couldn't agree on the fundamental, foundational grounding principles that Imiloa, we believed, needed to be built off of. And that is that it's teaching, whether it's astronomy, whether it's ocean, whether it's agriculture, whatever it may be, you teach it through a perspective that's uniquely from the place that you're in. And that you teach it in a way that is not separate from your culture, because our culture is all about understanding our place in our environment, in our universe. But it's teaching it and telling it through our own unique story, not somebody else's. We didn't have any models to go off of when we were building Imiloa, because a lot of quote-unquote science centers or astronomy centers very much teach from a very scientific language, which nothing is wrong with that. Scientific language has its value, but only within the context of the place that you're in, if it's going to be relevant to our keiki. So we had to build this center and put our stake at the table to make sure that the story and how we were going to tell the story about Mauna Kea was through our own community's perspective. And so today, we've now been open for 7 years, and we're a place of lifelong learning where we, through the power and the antiquity and the traditions of our own people, we tell the story of exploration. And as a part of that story, because it's an ongoing journey, we bring in the quote-unquote modern sciences as well, but grounded in who we are uniquely as Hawaii. We offer, from womb to tomb, pretty much. We have programming that impacts and affects everybody of all ages, and maybe I'll stop there.
Mahalo, thank you. And last but not least, Eric Enos from Waianae Ka'ala Farms. Eric?
Hello, mai kākou. It's always humbling to be with practitioners here. And, it's plenty ike, yeah? And here and out there, yeah. And I think, boy, wouldn't it be great if our ali'i trusts were managed by this kind of ike?
Hey, man.
We get so much potential. And we sit and stand on the shoulders of our kupuna and we honor them, yeah. Our kupuna can hold their breath, I tell you, man, because, we're sitting here and water's going like that, yeah. Coming up for air, yeah. You guys, when you work nonprofits, you're always coming up for air and you gotta swallow plenty of ocean. And you get pretty good at swallowing ocean. But we send greetings from Kamehameha o Kai'ona, the goddess of Ka'ala, and that wonderful place that we bring our water that fed us. And I love the uncle and Ere, auntie and uncle, yeah, that went before us. And that legacy that they came on the shoulders of kupuna and aumakua that went before us. And as we stand here, we sit here, and the things that our kupuna saw of just this place right here, this convention center, yeah. You can imagine what this place might have looked like. I always imagine we're working on a time machine, yeah. We got a few more things we got to do, get it down, right? But love to go back 2,000 years, yeah, and to see what the first ones to arrive saw. What wonder, what amazing things that the Aina, and that Aina shaped us. It made us what we are, yeah. It's like on Kepani, yeah. Right off the airplane from Tokyo, you're going to tell. The Kepani been here for 4 or 5 generations. They anchored to this Aina here. Yeah. So that's true of all of us, yeah. That many different parts of that haku lay of cultures. And so Hawaii does have a few lessons. This place has a few lessons for us. I like that question that was asked, what about the unborn? Yeah, because that's the twinkle that, that will, and that's the challenge of what kind of environment, what kind of place they will come to bear. And it's what happens in the womb that forms the child. And I say that because out in Waianae, things aren't getting better in terms of our native people. They aren't. And we're pouring millions and millions of dollars, and they always call it the big black hole because we live there, we work there, and we see it every single day, So, why, with all the resources we have, all the natural resources that we have, we can tweak the data, but it's not getting any better. I don't know. Am I off base? Is it? No. Educational things with our Native Hawaiian children? Are we working on Akule, in the schools? We're working with all our kids, and we see it, and we say, oh, but the answer lies here among us. It does. And I think we really got to get to the corporate board table, where corporate decisions are made in that bubble. Well-meaning, wonderful people, but it's still a corporate bubble. And the corporate table got to link up to the kitchen table, yeah. So that then we get one, even. Then after that, we take them to the lauhala mat. Then we drink plenty of ava for ike. I'm just kidding. So, about a few months ago, we went to Ka'ala, on top of Ka'ala, with one Lua group. And so we went up there, and when you go up there inside Ka'ala, anybody been on top of Ka'ala? Yeah, it's an amazing place. Yeah, it's so spiritual. But try climb them from Waianae. Those were a few knees ago. But anyway, you came from Mokuleia. Take 1 hour from Mokuleia. You go, yeah. So you reach up there, and you're all in the mist, yeah, all up the side, yeah. So I clung to the side, the Waialua side, and we well waited on that side, because it was just like, the mist. You can see nothing. Yeah? You wait. You cling to the edge, because over there, Pali, she go down. Yeah. You cling. You wait. All mist, all white out. Yeah. And then when she went open up, wow. You know, the term for the tapa, the top layer of your bedding, what is that term? Couple makers. Kiluhana, yeah? That comes from the tapestry, the designs. And that's what you see, the designs. You know, you can see all the designs of the aina, the green, you can see from Waialua all the way to Waianae Uka. You know, you can see all the rich lands of Pauahi that was given to her by her, you know, and just rich in water and rich in green, and you can see the ocean, you know. And so then from there went, wow, and then she closed, yeah, just like on veil, yeah. Ooh, okay, so now we're gonna walk on the boardwalk. We head to the Waianae side. So take a while, you walk all among your kupuna, and you hear rain, but you don't feel rain, yeah. Or you hear the sound of rain, but it's not raining. And the mist is all, I mean, when you're walking and you're dripping, yeah, everything is just misty in the chillness. And so we went on the other end, and we hung there again, waiting, you know, and it's just mist. And you know somewhere below there, and then when the thing open up, boom, then you see the heat, the vela kala, oi niho kala I Waianae, the biting tooth of the heat of the sun of Waianae, you know. And just the blue and the blacks and the browns, a little bit green here and there. And you see all the Hawaiians. With no more water, plenty of ocean. And we can see all the military bases which controls all that. And you see all the edges of our Hawaiians and all our recipes. You can see all the homeless encampments. Yeah. So here's this contrast. Two sides. One, wealth with water and green. The other side, for us at Ka'ala, just bringing that water back to our aina. And our battle of bringing the water back, that story, you know, bringing her back, the gift of Kawahine Helelau Kaiona, so that we can figure out how to plant kawa, how to replant our nation, and how to reconnect our families who are, you know, I mean, they're pretty bust up. And the babies, the idea, this thing, well, we're going to, take the test, yeah. A healthy child, as you all know, no learn. If the child does not come from a healthy place, physically, spiritually, that child not going to learn because not going to connect. So you got to take a look at a healthy child and how you create that healthy child. Healthy family, healthy community, healthy place. We focus on that first, then learning is going to be relevant. It's going to link up. Like for all of us who are educators, that's when the connections, and that's when we start building ka ohana, the health and the wealth of our people. So mahalo.
Thank you, Eric. Wow. How about a big hand for them so far? Just sharing. So I heard a number of themes. One is that obviously, again, the traditional knowledge, the traditional wisdom, we honor our kupuna, our ancestors. And it seems to me that, we've all had similar stories where we've had role models, that we looked up to that inspired us. The question now, and I want to kind of throw it out to the audience, and then maybe you guys can give us some feedback and ask some questions as well, is, okay, we have the institution of the public education system. We know what works in our community, right? We know that we need to engage our students to motivate them. And we have great examples here and great examples out there. So if students, and as Eric said, if they're not healthy, right, they cannot learn. If they're not motivated and they don't understand that what they're learning is relevant or is making a meaningful difference to their lives, to their community, to their family, then what's the purpose? And to me, what I also heard is that all of this is about survival. It was about survival in the old days, right? And it's about probably more about survival today, because we got so many challenges that today that face us, from a health standpoint, from a food standpoint, from a transportation standpoint, communication standpoint, whatever you want to call it, technology. So how do we begin, in my experience, not everybody, not all school, a'ohe pau ka'ike, right? So not all knowledge learning in one school. Not all schools, not all teachers, not all classrooms are ready for this. Does that make sense? So our strategy has been, we work with the ones that are ready, right? And then hopefully we can plant the seeds and we can provide the experiences where they go, oh yeah, that's right. The kids need to connect to the place they live. Hello, right? So the question is, how do we do that? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities for us to help, for all of us to help collectively make that paradigm shift? I love what Mary Carrere said yesterday, the Kaz from Ka'u Pahoa. And she was talking about getting into the canoe, right? She said, it was about, we all had to be in sync. We have to be in a synchronous kind of a place in order for the synergy to start happening. And to me, that was really profound. Yeah? So, questions out there for any of our panelists, or just Auntie.
So the problem in Wai'anae is that we know that the population is going to expand. And all we're going to have is more sick people and more children born in trauma. How do we claim our lands back so we can grow our own food and nutrition? Every one of them will be and instill in the child the genius of giving.
So, well, I appreciate the honesty of your observation, and sometimes, the truth hurts. But I agree, we have to look within ourselves. Any of you want to sort of respond to that, or? Eric? Yeah.
One comment. We get the land, we get the water, we get the resources already. It's sitting there. We need bridges. We got bridges that are going to connect. And we get all the kanaka, but they're not connected. So these guys know how to weave. You guys know how to weave to ulana, yeah? So we got to bring that ulana and just have all the agencies can get together. If we can start do community planning, usually it's from the bottom up. That's my,
Yeah.
I don't know. So, and it starts with ancestral wisdom and the technology. Modernity lives in tradition. It's not the other way around. Yeah? The values come from our people before us. That in there is modernity. Sometimes people think, and let's make it modern. No, modernity technology sits within the ipo of tradition. And it's a tool. How to use the tool appropriately and wisely. And wisdom, yeah. My mom had a third grade education, the wisest woman I have ever met in my life. A third grade education. She had common sense.
It's funny because it's the same. Our story is the same story that Mao saw almost 40 years ago. That was happening in Micronesia. They didn't want to learn their own traditions anymore. They saw what the Western world had, and they were running as fast as they could. And Kahape'a mentioned when we sailed Mao home in 1999 on Makali'i, they had basically shunned Mao for sharing the traditions. They had basically told him that he had broken tradition, so basically they're pissed off with him because he shared navigation with us. But in Mao's vision, when he came to Hawaii, his vision was that he was saving his people because his people didn't want to learn anymore. So he went to another people, like for him, he said the white man said, you Micronesian, you Masolese, you Hawaiian, you. To him, we all same people. We all connected. The bridge, the ocean connects us all. Mm-hmm. We all same people. We're not different. So for him, it was no different sharing his tradition with us because we're all the same people. But it was really in that sense that when we sailed him home in 1999, those larger islands that had embraced Western society so much, and they were so proud when we came to show us all the great things that they had, all the things that you're mentioning, they had all those things also. They had homeless. They had the drug problems. They had every other problem that we have here in Hawaii. But these smaller, tiny islands that held on to their traditions and still love their people and care for their people and grow their own food, you didn't see homeless people. You didn't see people that didn't have food. Everyone on those smaller islands, Kahape'a can tell you, they thrived. You didn't see any homeless. So it was really in that sense that we said, look at this society. That these, even for them, that they felt sorry because these small islands were so backwards. They didn't embrace the Western world. Poor thing, they never have electricity. Poor thing, they never have cell phones. Those poor people were thriving and surviving better than the people that had cell phones and everything else. It's really in that sense, like what Eric's saying, like we're all saying. We have the ability to do it. We got to be brave enough to step to it. We got to be brave. Mao told us a long time ago, in order to navigate, you have to be brave. In order to be brave, you have to trust in the words of your ancestors. It's really in that sense that if we want to be and to ensure that our communities, that our children, that the ones that come after us, they have to know the examples of the brave people that they come from. And we all sitting right here, like Uncle was saying. If they cannot see that example, who you think they're going to follow? Who you think they're going to follow? We have to be the ones. Right now, it's our time. We talk about our great ancestors that we come from. We live in this day and time to be the ancestors for the ones that will come after us. We have to be just as brave in this day and age. What we can do from the chairs that we sit in, from our organizations that we sit in, within our communities, is exactly that. Start to make those bridges and use them. Utilize the bridge. Walk across them. That's what Mao told us. He said, I build the bridge so that we can continue to utilize it. But it's up to you if you use the bridge. These organizations are here. It's up to us if we're going to utilize them. It's up to us if we're going to use the resources that are sitting right there. You know, Mao, we built a canoe for Mao. It's called Alengano Maisu. And the name Maisu comes from a wind that blows through the island of Sarawak and knocks the breadfruit out of the tree. The same thing on their islands, they still have their chiefs. The chief tell you when you can pick the breadfruit when it's in the tree, or when you can pick the kalo. But if this wind comes through and it knocks it out of the tree, it's no. Anybody can pick it up. And that's what Mao was hoping for his people. That the knowledge is here. It's for free. If you just pick it up and take it.
Mahalo, mahalo. Any other questions out there? or comments? Yes.
Mama ke mahalo me ka mua ia o kua pau ko mo ko ia pili hana he hano a nui loa ka ko ihi I ka au ko mo hana he hana nei. In that ko ihi ana, I just wanted to hapai the mana'o that my dad shared with me when I was younger. He's a cow farmer and he always gives away. Gives it away. We have a poi business and my mom, makes poi and he gives the poi away. And I always ask him, I said, Dad, why do you do that? You have to make a living. And he say, I don't have to make a living. I can eat my cow. I'm fine. But these people, I appreciate what they do and I do. That's how I can give back. Later on, there ended up being a lot of people coming up to our farm and wanting to learn and taking a lot of time. And these people started to, to buy halo and to make their own poi. And Dad, you're gonna lose all your business. And, all these people are gonna. He said, that's what I want. I want to be put out of business. Because when I get put out of business, then I know that I've done my job. And it took me a while to get my head around that idea, but I feel like as a kumu, I've only been a kumu for 9 years, but I feel like I look at you guys, and you guys are the educators that our kids respond to the best, and because you guys are doing your passion, you're living out your passion, and the organizations that you've created are built around your vahi and are built around your passion. For our kids, those are the things that are relevant and build relationships for them. And as a teacher, I know that. In that sense, I want to lose my job too. Because I would love to see educational opportunities that don't take place on the one-day field trip to Imiloa or the one huaka'i to Kauai where they get to visit Waipa. But how do we get these organizations to be replicated? How do we replicate them elsewhere and bring them back to the communities where these kids are, and so that they become perpetual learning experiences for the kids, and pretty much displace kumu in that there's no longer a facilitation required. It is present and it is what we do. You guys, us, I can go back, work on the farm, and be the kumu that I want to be, but teach through farming. Teach through my passion. Teach through what it is I know. And for every kumu, I believe, there is a passion, whether we're artists or we're farmers or we're lawai'a or anything. And as long as we are doing it on a foundation that is Hawaiian or cultural or from whatever culture, that is culture-based education. So what are we scared of? Who's going to take the risk? And how do we get that to happen? And,
Mahalo.
Your dad and your uncle taught us how to plant kalo in Waianae. No, that's a true story. Your dad and your uncle taught us how to plant kalo. Because for us, before that, poi was in a plastic bag, and I'm not kidding. That's my first. So anyway, mahalo to your family.
So what I heard is, again, we know what culture-based education is. It's got to be based on values, whether it's Hawaiian values or any other cultural values, and hopefully it's linked to place. To me, the formula is very simple. We provide opportunities to motivate our kids to be good learners. We provide opportunities for them to live that knowledge. And when they live that knowledge, then they will emerge as the next teachers. Because once they're able to teach it, then we know that they have what they call the depth. They have the depth of knowledge and understanding now. And they have that passion, hopefully. So, getting back to the bridges, right? I think it's, definitely it's a grassroots thing. That's how we all started this. But in society today, it really is a hierarchical strategy that everybody has different fields of influences, or some people call them trust circles, your sphere of influence, your friends, to be able to not brainwash, but to influence decision making, right? Because we know it's the truth. And the need is so great and the time is now. And we need to synergize and we need to get together and we have to put our egos aside. Because I'm tired of hearing all of the demographics, and all the statistics. We need to do. Yes. Okay, I think we have the answer right over here. No. That's a very good one, David. That's a tough one, and it is about lokahi, how to find that balance. Any comments from the panelists? Kayu?
I just wanted to add that, and going back to what you said in your opening statement, I think it's so important that our own people are sitting at the tables, quote unquote, that are directing, guiding, and making the changes within organizations, and building the bridges so that our kids can be there. And that, to me, that's my whole purpose for being involved in Imiloa. Yes, we're an education center, we get exhibits, planetarium, we do all kind of fun stuff. But at the end of the day, we're there because we want to inspire our kids to be those sitting and leading these organizations and these institutions that are defining what our economy is and what our value base is in terms of a society as a whole in Hawaii. And I think we gotta go and prepare our kids so that they're prepared to go, because it's really hard right now sitting at those tables. The tides haven't completely changed yet, but I'm super optimistic that the tides are changing and that more of our own people are getting into these positions that can influence change on some of these major institutional levels that are so deep-seated in bureaucracy. So it's not easy to be at those positions of change, but I think we're making good progress, and the more and more we're preparing our kids to take that on and not be afraid of it. I never thought I'd be running an astronomy center. That's not my background, that's not my connection. My connection is Waimea. And, but some reason, the path and the kuleana I have has led me to where I'm at. And I think if we can teach our kids to embrace that kuleana and not be afraid of it, because as much as you can plan your path ahead of you, it's always going to throw you different winds and different swells that's going to change it and take it where it needs to go and what your role is in that. So I think we just got to continue to prepare our kids. I see a change already with the kids coming out of your schools and your programs. They're already maupopo. And we need to help continue to foster that, but there are a totally new generation coming up, even different from mine, where we're sitting at these tables and trying to influence people from all over. We just got to continue to be kupa'a and continue to open those doors, because we're doing it not for us, but for these keiki that are coming up, because they're makaukau. We got to be makaukau for them and prepare for them.
I think for us, coming from our makali'i background, but then trying to replicate that education program on Oahu, it was very scary in the beginning. I mean, just to get the approval, not only from our community here, but from our wa'o ohana. Like Chad said, you gotta be the risk taker. You gotta be brave and get your community around you to support you if you wanna pursue being a teacher in the lo'i. It's possible. For us, we grew up with the charter school movement, so we had some of that support in our earlier years. And then as we've continued to grow, we've relied a lot on grant writing, grant support, OHA grants, Kamehameha schools, federal grants, wherever we can get the money to keep it going. It was really difficult. In the beginning, we wanted to do everything for free. And then on the flip side of that, people expected it for free. They didn't want to come and have to pay for the services. And then finally, I don't remember right now who told me this, but they said, you need to set your price. And I was like, oh, but you know, and they said, well, look at how much people it takes to maintain the canoe. You gotta pay insurance. There's all of these things you have to do. There's a cost. And then formulate a cost. And I said, okay. So I sat down one day, you know, and we looked at all of that and we said, okay, this is our cost. And I thought, no way people are gonna pay this. This is ridiculous, especially ocean-based, because the risk is high. So the insurance, there's a lot of costs, extra costs than if you're doing a land-based program. And sure enough, we set the price and we started our phones started ringing, and I was shocked. And you know, it kind of goes highs and lows, but we've been pretty busy in the last 3 years, busier than I could ever imagine. And it was because we set a value to our work. And if you set the value to your work, like if those Keiki and Kohala can set a value to their belt buckle or to their kalo production, and then they'll start to see that the community respects their work and that the need and the people will come to you because they respect what you're doing and the results that you can put out. So it was very difficult, and it's still very difficult. People call, and then it's like, oh, it's this much, and you can hear them kind of go like, oh, you know. And then you just say, well, you know, let's work something out. Maybe we can get funding. Let's write for grants for you to bring your students. So it's never like, this is our price, and if you can't pay it, you know, go down the street. But it's like, how can we work together to make this work? Because we never want to turn anybody away. And we still do a lot of the for aloha rates too. So, but it's finding the balance, you know, it's finding the balance, because it's expensive to maintain, you gotta buy your tools, it's just, that's the thing. And I think the other thing to kind of answer maybe part of Auntie Verlian's questions is one new project that we're starting this year that has always been in our vision is to encourage our Hawaiian youth to take on the maritime industry trades. From the 1800s, when the whaling ships came, and of course prior to all of our navigators and seafaring traditions, up into the whaling days, until just about 20 years ago, a lot of the waterfront, if you go down to Aloha Tower and you look out there, most of those, maybe not most, a lot of those jobs, the high-paying, in the wheelhouse captain jobs, were Hawaiians. Today, that is not true. The Hawaiians are back on the deck. So how do we encourage our youth, or how do we inspire them through the wa'a to generate that love for the ocean so that they can go out and get a high-paying job back out on the waterfront and be back in the wheelhouse, not the deck, in the wheelhouse, because we know they have the ability to do that because it's in their DNA, it's in their genealogy. So that's something we're gonna work on this year, and I'm really excited for it. To see if we can re-inspire that interest in our youth and see if we can get them back in the wheelhouse, and including not only just jumping on and getting the job, but also going to 2- and 4-year universities to earn their degrees in that. So I think that's one way that on the wa'a side of things, we can inspire them. And then the good thing about those jobs is they work 3 months, they off 3 months. So then we build into that. When they come home, now your kuleana is to get back on that wa'a and train and re-inspire new youth to do it. And so that's how I think our jobs in the community is to inspire and grow up new taro farmers, new community, new captains, new navigators, because they have to be able to survive.
Okay, we're about out of time, unfortunately, but did any of the panelists, Stacy, you want to, you're okay? Stacy, come on.
Oh,
Erica,
so many issues to
I
address.
know.
Uncle David, I feel your pain. I just wanted to, a couple things that Uncle David said that I really wanted to focus on too, is that it's amazing what you guys are doing with the youth out there and growing your food, expanding the kalo out there. A crazy thing about the economy that we live in today is that it's completely different, of course we know, from our economy. And that kalo, it's going to be very, very hard to turn that kalo into the kind of dollars that it should be turned into. Agriculture today just doesn't translate like that. But hopefully, and the kalo farmers, a lot of them are struggling. I mean, 80% of the poi kalo in the state is grown in Hanalei, and only the ones that have more than 40 acres are really, and grow commercial with full-on chemicals are the ones that are staying above water. Any of the small kalo farmers, economically, they're not surviving. It's really hard. And so what is it? How do we do that? And I think if we recognize that that trade and the aloha and the goodwill and the providing it to our community is important, it's of as much value feeding ourselves and feeding our community as the dollars that are going to come out of it. That's the biggest deal, I think, because it doesn't translate into the kind of dollars that you can make going out and doing something else, working on a tour, or this or that, or the other thing, working in the hotel. But I think with the new, the growth of this supportive community and the growth of all the things that we're doing, it is creating slowly a new industry. There are the folks who ku'i kalo here on Oahu that are creating a new market at a higher price for slowly small amounts of kalo, and then more and more that I think are giving hope to the entire industry. And there are the things that, like you said, the belt buckles that you create with your hands that hold a super high value. And to the extent that you can get those into the hands of the affluent tourists that come here that are willing to pay that high value, but at the same time provide enough of those to your ohana that you can and that you want to, maybe that is the balance. It's a crazy, difficult balance to strike, but it's such an important one because we do live in a time when you got to pay the bills, right? And of course, the more food you grow, the less bills you got to pay. And that is really important. But it's also changing our kids' whole mindset from not wanting the other stuff and being happy and ma'a with the kalo and the food that we can grow on the aina. I think Waipa's is right in that place too. I'm so excited to hear how you guys are valuing your services because we're going the same direction. But also to speak to what Uncle Eric said, another key part of it, kind of everybody said, is subsidy. Yeah, is being able to be subsidized by Kamehameha schools, by the grants, to be able to serve and inspire the children and the young people in our community so that we are forming this larger community as everybody grows up. There will always be required subsidy to deal with the people that, to deal with us folks. And so that's a huge part of it also. And I think that's important and it should be just accepted is that we need to subsidize these organizations that are growing this community and practicing culturally based education and changing the whole paradigm until they can get slowly economically more on their own. And that's kind of where Waipa has been pushed to is when is Waipa going to be self-sufficient? And it's a very precarious place. We're going to embark on highly valued cultural educational tours to hopefully bring funding in from the parts of our community that are interested in learning, to learn about what we're doing, and hopefully not lose ourselves in the process. And so it's a fine line we're going to walk, and our whole goal is to understand how we can do that and preserve our culture and values and practice them, and at the same time be supported to practice them too. So we'll see.
Thank you very much, everybody. So if we can leave with one closing thought, what I heard everybody say, it's about collaboration too, right? Because none of us can do this by ourselves. And collaboration is not just about cooperating, it's amplifying each other and building upon the strengths of each other. That's true collaboration. And if we can all begin to collaborate and all help each other and build those relationships and those partnerships, then we can begin to make the paradigm shifts that we all want to see. How about a big hand for our panelists, everybody? Thank you. Aloha.